Now, Aubrey, thank you so much for joining us, and let's get straight into it. Whilst Sascoc is the mother body of sport, what is CSA's legal recourse?
Well, I think we've got to start from the point to understand what is Sascoc's powers and where it gets its powers from. It gets its powers, obviously, from the National Sports and Recreation Act, as well as its own constitution. CSA is a member federation of Sascoc, and it's bound to the constitution of Sascoc. And in terms of its constitution, Sascoc may suspend or terminate the membership of any of its members. It may apply a dispute resolution mechanism set out in the constitution. But we know that on the 8th of September, it adopted a resolution where it resolved to appoint an independent task team to conduct investigations into the affairs of CSA. And it has done so pursuant to Section 12 of the National Sport and Recreation Act. And it's important to understand what that act allows for. It says that the Sports Commission, that's Sascoc, may, of its own accord and at any time, cause an investigation to be undertaken to ascertain the truth within a sport or recreational body, where allegations exist of malpractice, including corruption and so on. And it may ask the minister to approach the President of the Republic to appoint a commission of inquiry referred to in Section 84(2) of the Constitution. Sascoc has claimed that this intervention by its task team is only for a limited period of time. The question whether or not CSA has any recourse will very much, I think, depend on how it cooperates with Sascoc. Sascoc will, of course, as I said, act in terms of the legislation that gives Sascoc the power to launch this investigation. I do not think it will be able to resist any sort of court action for it to be compelled to act or to comply with what the Act says.
Now, Aubrey, on that point, I want to ask you two questions. One here, with you saying you don't think that Cricket South Africa will be able to resist. I assume then that Sascoc can force them to release the forensic report that they still haven't released and are still refusing to do so. And then my second question on that report is there have been allegations that details of the report may implicate individuals who could be eligible for nomination at the next AGM, the very same AGM which we know have been postponed on more than one occasion. So should this AGM eventually take place and certain individuals are then voted in and the report is only released after that, what could that mean?
Well, I think firstly, one has to bear in mind what Sascoc, and CSA has said for its own refusal to release the report, which in itself is extremely concerning. CSA has relied on legal advice, which it says entitles it to withhold the release, even to its mother body, Sascoc, this report. And this legal advice appears to be carved out so as to protect Cricket South Africa against public scrutiny for all these allegations that has played itself out so very publicly. One would want, of course, for proper corporate governance to play out, for that report to be released prior to that election. And time will tell whether or not Sascoc will have the impetus to approach the court, perhaps on an urgent basis, to release the report. If I was acting in that matter, I would certainly have done that a long time ago, because a lot of this centers around this very mysterious report that CSA will go to any lengths, it seems, to keep under wraps, even relying on legal advice that it has received.
Now, Aubrey, let's just park that forensic report, and thank you so much for giving us insight on that. Just the other day, Momentum mentioned that come April 2021, they will no longer be the head sponsor to the 50 overs for men in cricket. And following that, we saw one of CSA's members, Dr. Eugenia Kula Amay, have a bit of a controversial tweet to which Cricket South Africa apologized to Momentum momentum. Prior to that controversial tweet, she has as well engaged on Twitter with players as well as the president of soccer, which was also a bit controversial. And you've just mentioned good governance. Whilst some of the things that she might say might be fair enough to say, it is a public domain. Talk to us about that good governance. Talk to us about the conduct that an individual like her should have.
Absolutely. Cricket South Africa is very important to understand. Cricket South Africa is a non-profit company, so it is subject to the corporate governance and the legal requirements of the Companies Act. On its website, it claims that it applies most of the King Code of Governance, which is a very important document as far as corporate governance of boards in South African law is concerned. But I've noticed that, in an obvious departure from King 3 is the fact that the majority of its directors are not independent. So despite what it claims, it appears not to be following that code. Importantly, as far as CSA is concerned, one must bear in mind that its board members carry the same responsibility as any director of a company in South Africa, including potential personal liability under certain circumstances where they breach their fiduciary duties that they owe to CSA. So whatever the directors or the board members of CSA does, they must remember that they act within the scope of a set of rules set out previously by the common law and now codified in the Companies Act, and that there's always the specter of personal liability for things that they do. And it's not easy. It's not as easy simply to say that the views expressed by a board member does not reflect the views of a company. There are very real consequences when you are a director of a company for your actions, whether or not you're an executive director or a non-executive director. Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you there, Aubrey, but thank you so much for joining us. We have unfortunately run out of time, but you definitely have given our viewers a lot of insight into this tug of war that we see, happening very publicly between Sascoc as well as Cricket South Africa. That was Aubrey Macherman, an attorney with Abraham Skivitz Attorneys in Cape Town.